Well, welcome back to the Online Church Blueprint. And you made it. You made it to episode 2. Congratulations. You deserve a pat on the back or a gold star or whatever you want me to put on your chore chart, if you know what a chore chart is. I'm Andy. I'm one of the hosts here for the Online Church Blueprint. And you're going to be hearing from our other co-host, Mark Lutz from Lux Digital Church, in just a second. But hey, if you got a chance to run through episode 1, you heard Mark and I really start to set forth what we want to do with the Online Church Blueprint. And that's this. We really want to give you a how-to really journey and checklist of items and things that you're going to be able to do to get your online church up and running, to get your digital church presence moving, and really to increase engagement. And episode 1 was all about forming digital small groups, kind of the how-tos that are involved in getting digital small groups up and running from 0 to 100. And you heard Mark and I kind of break down a number of steps. All of those steps, along with a handy-dandy checklist, are located in that episode. So you can check the links below for our playlist if you're on YouTube, or if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Podcasts or Stitcher or Overcast or any of the trillion other places on the internet that you can find podcasts. All of that information will be in the show notes, or just hit subscribe. We'd love to have you subscribe to this. And if you are watching on YouTube, hit the thumbs up button, which will kind of let us know that you like what's going on. And honestly, hit the subscribe button. It'll really help out our channel and really help out this instruction get out to more people. So after talking about online small groups and digital small groups, I kind of really felt that we need to expand upon that a little bit. You know, Mark and I talked about the necessity of digital small groups and how the internet can be kind of a cold place, a place that really segregates you into little pockets and really can make you feel alone. And we're increasingly becoming disconnected with the power of the internet. But we have this amazing stuff. We have these amazing tools at our fingertips. Literally, I'm speaking to you through one of the most amazing things that has ever been invented, through, internet and digital media and video and audio that we can just stream whenever we want. And we really want to combat that dissociation, that feeling of aloneness. And so that's why we kind of started this entire process with how to form digital groups. We want to help you really fulfill the Great Commission to go and make disciples by really showing you how to group people up. But episode 1, all about how to create small groups. But then what? You create a group and now you have to train up leaders, and you kind of gotta make sure everything meshes well. And so this episode is actually going to be all about how to train up your small group leaders. What's the best practices for online small groups? And what's the best practices for forming those leaders? And you're going to be surprised. It's actually a little bit different if you have any knowledge of, in-person group leadership training. It's actually a little bit different. There's a lot more vision casting that goes into it. And really, we're kind of light on the tools and the curriculum. And you'll understand why once you get through this episode. A disclaimer, I am affiliated with Altar Live, honestly, the best platform out there for digital church engagement. You can sign up for a free 14-day trial with the links below. And Mark is affiliated with Lux Digital Church, a church that is primarily designed around reaching into the gamer culture, into Twitch culture, if you know anything about Twitch and Discord and gamer culture, but also really it is a digital church. And so he knows his stuff about digital church. And we are kind of meshing all of this together with Altar Live and kind of the church engagement and Lux Digital Church. And we are just so thrilled that you are on this journey with us. So without further ado and further bloviating on my part, because you're going to hear enough of that in just a few seconds, here is episode 2 of the Online Church Blueprint. Welcome back to the Online Church Blueprint, the best and only podcast on the internet that actually talks about how to do online church. Would you agree with me, Mark Lutz?
100% agree. Totally, completely, 100% agree.
We're topping the charts right now in all of the online church areas, and Yeah, you can't beat us. You can only join us. And so to join us,
I don't even know what that means.
yeah, I know that's fine.
Which chart? Who made
You
the
know,
chart? Where's
I
the
did.
chart at?
I did, and it's in my Apple Notes right now. So we're number
Yep.
one. Number two is non-existent. So there you go, everybody. Welcome. Yeah, this is episode 2. Episode 1 was great. We got a chance to talk about how to form online small groups, and there was a lot of sage advice. Actually, Mark, this is a interesting little tidbit. At Bay Hope Church, I have a dude who works in my department. I guess he works for me, but he works for the church, whatever. Anyway, he saw that it was posted. He went and watched the entire episode. And he actually, in our one-on-one that day, he had a list of things that he wanted to talk about that you had actually mentioned. Well, we had both mentioned, but he has heard me bloviate about these things a lot. And he was like, man, that Mark guy, he really knows what's going on. I said, yeah.
Tricked him, got
Yeah,
him, wool's over his
exactly.
eyes.
So,
now
Austin.
here's episode 2. Here we come.
Austin, this one's for you, buddy. Hey, in this episode, we're actually going to talk about, we're going to take the how to form online small groups just a little bit further. And we referenced it a little bit in the first episode. If you missed any of that stuff, you can head to the description below, the notes below, the chat below, the doodly-doos below, wherever you're watching this. Or if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify or Google Podcasts or whatever, it'll be in the show notes. Just open up your app and you can click through to listen or watch. We talked about forming online small groups, and one of the key things was that you needed to raise up leaders. It is the age-old thing that happens in the church world where you got to find leaders from somewhere. We can't pay everybody, and so 99 times out of 100, it has to be a volunteer. And once we do find those people that are actually willing to lead groups of people, because as we stated in the first episode, we believe that community is the best way and the only way, really, to have a small group to further discipleship. Actually, Mark and I were just talking about this before this call. Talk about discipleship in your church and in your online area. And those leaders come from various and different places. But once you have them, how do you actually train them up? And so we kind of have a checklist going on. You can find the checklist again in show notes or all those other things. I've got 5 quick steps here, and Mark and I are going to converse on them. I'm basically going to interview him on these 5 steps. And Austin, he's going to give you all the information he has. So number 1 in how to train up small group leaders is you need to train them on your vision of leadership. You need to make sure that they understand what you're trying to go for in the church. Now, Mark, as we stated in the last episode, you are the lead pastor of Lux Digital Church. Actually, I'm wearing a Lux hat right now. Dope hat. You can go buy
Really
merch.
nice hat.
Yeah, you can buy
can't.
merch at the... Oh, you can't buy the hat anymore. You can buy the sweatshirts, though, right?
If this episode comes out before November 30th, yes, you can buy a sick Twitch, on Twitch as it is in heaven sweatshirt. But if this comes out after it, no, you missed your chance. Sorry, guys. We warned you too late.
Well, I don't know when I'm gonna be able to get this out. So sorry, you guys missed out. But your vision of leadership in Lux is one that is particular to your community, as it should be. So, what is your vision of small group leadership? What is your vision of discipleship on Twitch and on Discord?
Oh, wow. Yeah, and that's a really it's
broad.
Big question.
Yeah.
Sure. I think a lot of the hard thing when we talk about specifically discipleship is that everybody comes at it with a slightly different understanding, and that is the same when it comes to small groups, right? Because one person has life groups, the next one has community groups, the next one has affinity groups, the next one has sermon-based small groups, fish. Yeah, all of the. There's a group that fishes together. There's a group that drives Jeeps together. There's a group that, we have the Highlands model, and they're the first ones to ever do it. When that's not the case, obviously. We have Sticky Church, whatever. So for us, like discipleship has always been people taking their next step in obedience to Jesus. And that looks different for each person. It has to be happening inside the context of relationship, specifically because you don't know what someone's next step is just by prescribing something on a Sunday morning. And then for our context, right, because the online world can be cold, we talked about this last episode, small groups create that warmth, right? It creates that place where people have the opportunity to actually connect with one another, build relationships. So a lot of our small groups have the majority of their time and energy focused on hearing people's stories and helping people connect to one another. And that's the majority emphasis of kind of what we do in small groups. When I talk about small group leadership, some of y'all might be like, well, I'm trying to train people to lead people through systematic theology, by what is it, Grudem, or there's a whole bunch of them out now, right? And the training that you want to do to have someone lead a group through a systematic theology novel, novel's a bad word there, tome, a systematic theology tome.
Oh, that's even more biblical.
Yeah, there's the training is completely different, right? So my examples in this is going to be like, how do we build leaders? And how do we build people that can facilitate conversation and help build community and help connect people to one another?
Yeah, that's a good call. With Bay Hope, our philosophy of leadership is much the same. We believe that community fosters discipleship. We believe that as a leader, not even as a small group leader, but as a church leader, so as a pastor or whatever we are doing, that our job as a leader is not necessarily to go and do the work, which always sounds so stupid. It's like, oh, you guys aren't doing work. It's like, no. We're training leaders to go be leaders in their community. We can more easily, I'm good with English. We can more easily affect change if we train leaders to go be leaders in their context as well. So that's kind of our vision of leadership. Let's be leaders of leaders, and let's continue to train them to lead small groups. It's a lot of leading, which leads us into number 2, which is train your people to understand they are not biblical authority and that they don't need to have all the answers. This is one that I actually, when I first became a Christian, I was a hotshot know-it-all, came straight out of college and had failed out of college, had a bad drug habit, and was broke and didn't know anything except that I knew everything. And I started leading a small group, which was stupid. And I thought I had all the answers to everything in the Bible because I had a NIV study Bible. And somebody asked me a question, and I would just go to that study Bible and read some things and then try to, talk my way out of a wet paper bag. And what I had to learn was a little bit of humility. I never had a leader that actually told me, as I was training to be a small group leader, hey, you don't need to have all the answers. It's okay. It's okay that the Bible takes authority over you. It's okay that you can say, I don't know. It's okay to say, let's go find that out together. Mark, when you're training leaders for Lux, that's, I'm assuming, part of the curriculum. Is it not?
A big part of the curriculum for us is like, we really, and I should even pull this up, and like, honestly, if someone's listening and they're like, I will go through what leadership training looks like for us, and I'll try to do it as quickly as possible when the time is right in this episode. But
yeah,
a lot of the emphasis for us is like we place a much higher emphasis on listening than anything else. What we find is there's not really a limit to the information that you can consume in the world. Like, if people really want to know how to become an expert in something, they can go do that somewhere else. Like, if they have a genuine question about the Bible, they might come and seek out help with the church, but most of them are going to Google it. And so more than anything, it's like we really want to train our leaders to be good listeners and to learn how to hear and to receive people's stories more so than like to become educators. And the whole trap of like, we need our small group leaders to be able to have all of the answers and to be educators it's pretty. I don't have all the answers. I've been in ministry for a while.
Wait, what?
Have
Stop
2 degrees.
Stop the presses. You don't have all the answers.
No, absolutely. I mean, come on, man. Like, I'm leading our church right now through the book of Ezekiel in the Bible in 1 year. And like, Ezekiel's, guys, I've read it like 3 times. This is my 3rd or 4th time reading. It's terrible. Like, it's so, like, there's a lot of dead Egyptians in the second half of Ezekiel. Like, a lot of dead Egyptians and Israelite, like, all throughout. And so it's like, I'm getting questions in that. I'm like, bro, I'm supposed to be the spiritual leader of this community, and I have absolutely no idea what some of these passages and things mean. So like, yeah, so I think that there's just a trap that is involved in that, and it's more important that your leadership knows how to listen to people and ask good questions than it is that they know how to teach or to clarify or to educate.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an interesting thing that happens too with leaders that understand that they don't have all the answers. It's called humility. And leaders that are showing genuine humility and genuine authenticity is something that I feel like the modern church is missing out a lot on. And maybe that's just because of the proliferation of larger churches on YouTube and things like that, where they have these big bombastic preachers. But I feel like there's almost a machismo to being a small group leader. At least that's what I've seen in our area.
Yeah, no, there's definitely some truth to that, and it just really depends on the culture of the church. And honestly, it has more to do. Most of your people that are coming in and saying I want to be a small group leader, they've been at church somewhere else, right?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
and the real problem for small group leadership is not. It really comes to the fact that you have conflicting visions very frequently, and division is two visions. Literally means two visions, division, and so. A lot of times people just come in and they have actually either they've been trained or they were thrown to the wolves and left to try to figure it out, or they've had success somewhere else with this one thing with this specific group, and they're like coming. They just assume that when you say small group, they just assume that you mean what they have experienced in the past.
Right.
And most of your small group leaders are becoming leaders because of their experience in the past. And some of the people who've grown up inside of your own ministry that now want to become a small group leader because you've built multiplication baked into your small groups, right? That's what we do at Lux. They don't even have a very good idea, right? They only have what they've experienced on that side of things. They very rarely know the level of intention that was behind it. They just thought, oh yeah, Josh just met with us every week, and we seem to BS, and now I want to do that, right? And like they don't know the level of intensity that Josh put in behind everything to make sure that it happened well, and how often he was frustrated when he left because he couldn't steer the conversation towards anything that he felt was profitable. And then he was like, "Hey, who wants to be a small group leader?" And Jimmy's like, "I'll be a small group leader. I can BS." And so it's also really important, even inside your own context. Don't just assume that somebody who was raised up in your church and grew up in your small group ministry really knows what the intentions, the purpose, and the vision of small groups are.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why that step one was train them on the vision of your leadership. Let everything come from the vision of what your church leadership and what your small group leaders should be doing. Moves us into number 3, and it kind of is a culmination of 1 and 2, and that is train your small group leaders to see themselves as extensions of church leadership. So train them on the vision that you have. Train them on the fact that they don't know everything, that they are not biblical authority, and that they can ask questions. And then number 3, train them to see themselves as extensions of church leadership. Empower them. Let them know that they have the full weight, within reason. You don't want to go telling everybody to, that it's okay to drink Kool-Aid with arsenic in it and put Nikes on. You want to make sure that people are understanding that there is a bit of wiggle room in everything that's happening, but also that your church leadership is empowering them to go forth and minister. That is a huge, huge thing. Actually, I've seen in our context in any church I've been in, when you go and tell somebody, look, I see in you ... and you tell them that, and you're honest with them, you're not trying to build them up or anything, but you tell them, hey, I see in you the ability to lead, to empathize, to ask questions, to speak to people, to be a good leader. Would you do this on behalf of the kingdom of God? And then, in my opinion, it kind of makes everything, it greases the wheels a little bit in terms of the training thing.
No, yeah, I completely agree with that. Giving people, like, knowing that you believe in somebody is really important, and when you identify in them gifting, like, we all need that friend, we all need that mentor, that person who can, like, look in us and see things that we can't see in ourselves and can call that out in us. And it's a step of faith for you, it's a step of faith for them, and then for them to realize that they are representing who you are as a church. Yeah. They're representing your vision. They're representative of your theology. And so you don't have all of the answers, but you better answer a few things right. And I think that, like, you got to make sure that there's some level of alignment. Like, it can't just be like, hey, you filled out an application. Fantastic. Now we're going to put your name on the website and see who signs up for it. And then we're going to wonder why 10 people left our church. And so I think, like, oh, you guys starting your own thing now. Didn't know that. I guess I gave this. I guess I gave Jimmy a platform to take 10 people with him. And that happens too easy inside a small group ministry because let's just be honest. Like wolves are attracted to authority. They love positions of influence because it's a perfect place to wolf things, and so you do need like some level. It's an adjective that
I'm gonna think. I'm gonna think about that one. Yeah,
I verbed that. I don't know. I don't know. I'm really bad at the English language. That was noun.
Adverbed.
I adverbed the crap out of that. So you just have to be aware of that. Like, make sure you guys have some alignment because they are an extension of your church. Like when somebody comes into a new small group, they are expecting that what they experience inside of that group is representative of what the church believes. They don't think of you two separately. Like they kind of think, oh, okay, yeah. They don't think of you as a rogue agent, as a small group. They're like, I think this is a person who represents what this church believes. I can ask them questions and faithfully receive responses that'll also be accurate of the pastor's heart.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you say to the people that are small group leaders or training to be potential small group leaders that don't necessarily agree with all of the points of your church's theology or all of the finer details of we can go sacraments, but that's a big churchy word there. What do you say to those people that are showing interest in becoming a small group leader?
Yeah, and I'm about to say this, and then also realizing that I don't know that I've even done this for Lux, or maybe I started doing it and totally forgot to keep doing it. But in my, I led small groups for a church for years before this. My entire youth ministry was small group driven for years before that. And so one of the things that we had that was a key tool was a covenant. And you signed that covenant when you became a leader, and that covenant it gave you the non-negotiables, like, hey, these are the things that are appropriate in theology and teaching. These are the things that are, inappropriate in behavior. And then they had to sign it, and I had permission to dismiss them if they broke those things. And the stuff that was outside of that, like, come and ask me questions about it. But as long as your belief in isn't like totally, the truth is too, like, a lot of times if you have a small group leader who wants to teach heresy, like, you figure out, right? It's like, if it's, I'm a 7-day creationist and I want everyone in my group to be 7-day creationists. It's like, oh, okay, like, whatever. Like, yep. That's not going to make a difference if I'm not that, and like I have a small group of people who are that. But like when somebody comes in and they're like, no, we're supposed to be sacrificing animals still. Like, someone usually calls you. They're usually like, hey, not sure what's going on, but in my online small group tonight, my leader killed a goat. And you're like, oh, I'm gonna follow up.
Live on camera too. It was really weird.
Yeah, it was super bloody, and I'm pretty sure it broke a bunch of stuff that, Discord or whatever allows, and but it happened. So what should we do about that? Usually there's people who are in your group, like, they'll be like, yeah, that seems heretical. I don't think, even people who didn't grow up in the church, right? Like I have a guy in our church who grew up as a fundamentalist Muslim, and like, he could still identify red flags, and like, there's some things that he doesn't quite get theology wise with, like, Jesus being the Son of God. Like, it's a hard pill for him to swallow. Like, he's learning to trust Jesus, but like, even not growing up in the church, having no context for it, like, he's still pretty capable of identifying things that seem heretical.
Yeah.
And usually someone in the group will let you know. So stuff that's like really out of bounds, you'll hear about, but the covenant really helps you let people know clearly what's expected of them and what's expected that they won't believe. And then also it gives you like a really good way to get rid of someone if they're out of bounds.
Totally. Yeah. And we're all about getting rid of people. That's what we do as church leaders. We just set them up and knock them down. All kidding aside,
leadership, you got to guard your team, right? You got to guard your team culture. And sometimes, honestly, the best, it's really hard when you're starting, because when you're starting, you have to do, it's like this, there's this phase, right? Where when you start with leadership, especially with small group leaders, like, you just got to take people. And then there comes a point in time, and we're going through this right now, where the bar has to get up. Like, we got to raise the bar. And the problem is that some people can't get to where the bar is now. Yep. And some of the people that got you to where you are now can't go to where the bar is. And sometimes those people rise to the occasion. Sometimes those people can't do it. They have to be repositioned. And sometimes those people just are thorn in your side and you have to boot them. And because they're just, instead of recognizing the fact that my giftedness can't get me there, they just become a poison to your team. And you have to, they're never going to leave on their own, right? You have to remove them. I mean, you can wait for them to leave on your own, but then you're going to be dealing with the wreckage of getting rid of poison from your team for the next 6 months. You know?
Yeah. And we'd rather not even get there. So make sure that your people see themselves as extensions of your church in order to not have the flaming wreckage of families that used to come there. And you'll notice in the last two, it's only now that I'm getting to like the actual practical nuts and bolts things. This is going to be a theme throughout a lot of this podcast series because most of what we do, this is a little secret, and I'll give you this one for free. Most of what we do as church leaders doesn't involve practical stuff. It involves having conversations and forming relationships. Let that one sink in. I feel like Elon Musk walking in with a sink into Twitter right now. Train that might be an outdated reference by the time this one comes out. I'm not actually sure if Twitter's even going to be around.
It'd be fine if it wasn't.
Maybe.
Send all the toxic people to LinkedIn. Kill that one next.
Oh, I'm for that. And then we can send them a TikTok too.
One at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Number 4, and this is again nuts and bolts. Train your small group leaders on curriculum and their role as leaders. So we kind of formed the vision, we formed the basics, we formed all those things. Train them on the curriculum. Now this is gonna be part of. From episode 1, we talked about picking curriculum, picking where you're getting your studies for. If it's in person, are you doing book studies? Are you doing like actual like author-written book studies? Are you doing books of the Bible? Are you doing a video online? Where are you getting your videos from? Where are they coming? You know, the multi-zillions of ways that you can get your curriculum. Train them on the curriculum itself, even if that's just giving them the leader guide. And then train them on their role as a leader inside of that curriculum. Are they to just ask questions? Do they have to make a presentation? Do they have to give speeches? Do they need a co-host? Do they need a facilitator? On and on and on. There's 4 or 5 different steps in there. Mark referenced at the very beginning of this podcast that there's Sticky Church, and then there's the Saddleback Way, and then there's the Willow Way, and then the North Point Way. There's 100 different ways of doing. Pick one that aligns with you and your vision and leadership of the church, but then stick to that and train your leaders to do so. Mark, in Lux, how are you training leaders to stick to curriculum? Is it question based? Is it more free flowing? Like what's the theoretical boundaries within that?
We've tried a couple of different things. Right now we're on sort of like the Larry Osborne sort of like sermon-based small groups. I do really value the fact that it helps to put everybody on the same page. Because our small groups we're in the fall, and because they're so relationship focused and these groups just formed, a lot more of it is like, I don't really care if you get to the questions. Like I care more that you spend time together and that people want to come back to your group in February.
Yep.
We do terms. We do 3 terms a year. So we're in groups 26 weeks, 10 weeks in the fall, 10 weeks in the spring, 6 weeks in the summer. And yes, the summer is low attended. And yes, I know we shouldn't do it. But we're still doing it. And then we take basically 26 weeks off a year. And so that kind of gives you a little bit of like where we're at. Now, when it comes to like training leaders on curriculum and stuff, like I don't harp on that as much as I do like training them to be good facilitators and training them to lead. So for me, when it comes to leadership, in developing new leaders, and I can go over sort of our rhythm for the year, but like we have in the spring is when we train new leaders, and we train those leaders inside the context of groups. So a leader chooses an apprentice in the fall, in between the fall and the spring during the holiday. They have an ICU conversation with their apprentice. They ask that apprentice to be trained. They have 9 to 10 weeks to train them in the spring. And in those 9 to 10 weeks, we sort of have a weekly curriculum touch point with homework, with all those things. And the goal is where each week we're combining experience, coaching, and education. Experience, coaching, and education. So there's something that they're learning with education. There's something they're experiencing because they're gaining the ability to like try something, right? They're leading the opening prayer, or they're leading the discussion questions, or they're doing the icebreaker, or they're leading the whole group. And then there's coaching. So there's questions that are pre-written that are asked between the coach and the apprentice every week after group in that 15 minutes. how did group go this week? We're teaching you how to evaluate. What do you think we could do better next week? We're teaching you to be critical, right? Well, what about this or that? Like, and so we build on those conversations, and there's some care involved in that. How can I pray for you this week? And the group leader is sort of praying for the apprentice and caring for them. But we really want to see those three things come together: coaching, experience, and education. We think when those things come together, we develop a leader. If you picture a Venn diagram or whatever, you get the three circles. I think that's the Venn diagram. I was never good at graphs or words, as it turns out. But like, I'm not a graphs guy. Like that sweet spot in the middle. And so, but that's universal, right? So that can be used in any small group. It's like, okay, well, if I want to develop a leader, what do they need to know education wise? But that's not enough. See, some small group ministries, they really miss this. They think they just have to know stuff, or it's just experience. Like, we'll just throw them in and they'll figure it out as they go. Or it's just coaching. Like, if I just have someone meet with them every week for 6 months, it's guaranteed. But the coach doesn't always know what they're supposed to teach, right? And they don't always give them experience. So then they're just like talking to them each week and they just throw them in. So those three things have to come together. So make sure all of your pieces that they need to know is in the education piece. Make sure you're writing prescribed stuff for the coaching. Make sure you're giving them opportunities and handing pieces of the small group to them over time for experience. You put those things together, I think you have a really good opportunity to develop a new leader.
Absolutely. Yeah. In terms of curriculum at Bay Hope too, we're typically following 3 different tracks. We have an overall discipleship track that has been being developed for years and years and years. Well, a little bit of time now. That is mostly video-based, especially in the online world. We are following an alpha track. Again, godalpha.org or whatever the alpha thing. I love alpha. I am a big proponent of what alpha is doing. It is just so cool to see the way that new and old Christians come together and people that are not even believers come together in small groups and get something out of alpha. I love that. And then we're usually we have a couple of leaders that one of them actually wrote he's been a Christian for like 1,000 years. He wrote an entire inductive Bible study into the life of Jesus. And so he's just kind of leading that. And the funniest thing is that this dude's 65, 70. He's been around the church, dyed in the wool type Christian.
1,000 years, yeah.
1,000. I mean, he came down the mountain with Moses and had a Bible study written, and he has people joining his group. Like, he's going out and recruiting his own people into this online group. And this dude, like, I didn't even think he would ever know how to, like, work a computer camera. And now he's leading an online Bible study, and he's getting more and more people to join this thing, and people like what he's doing. And it's this weird inductive, it's very cool. That's all curriculum-based. Notice that I have put nothing in any of these about what number 5 is. And after you get through all of the heady stuff and all of the choosing stuff, then and only then do you train them on the tools. Because the tools are simply the medium by which your message is being translated. The tools are the thing that's the easiest thing in the world to take care of. I, of course, am a big proponent of Altar Live. Spoiler, I think it's the best platform out there. If you're not using Discord and Zoom is whatever, I think it's the best platform to kind of put an entire church on, online or physical, simply because there is live mechanisms that you can live broadcast and live stream. There are tables and lobbies and things that you can meet with people before and after services, but there's also this huge, robust meetings and small group area. And you pay for one subscription and you get all of these things based on that one subscription. You don't need a million different Zoom licenses or anything like that. You just give it to your leaders. You say, here you go. Here's a login. Go wild. Go start whatever group you want. There are other things out there. I know Mark is and Lux is using Discord primarily. Is there any Zoom small groups happening as well? Doesn't your wife do a Zoom group?
Yeah. My wife, her group uses Zoom for a variety of reasons, but many of her small group members are not like active Discord users. Yeah. So Zoom is easier for them.
Sure. Yeah, and it's a comfortability thing as well. Ever since the pandemic started, everybody got acquainted with Zoom. Zoom turned into Kleenex. Like, you don't use a tissue anymore, you use a Kleenex. You don't use a bandage, you use a Band-Aid. You don't do an online call, you Zoom somewhere. Altar Live is trying to break that, but that's only in the online church world for the moment. I would also point people a little bit, again, I reasoned this out last episode, but Facebook Classroom is doing some interesting things, and I hate Facebook. I hate what they stand for. I hate all of those things. So I'm sorry if you're listening, Meta. deal with it. But Facebook Classroom is actually a really interesting thing. It allows asynchronous communication with a live component. I think you can use that in conjunction with something like Alter Live or something like Zoom to really get the best of both worlds. Mark, if you guys weren't meeting a Discord, or well, let me posit it this way: when you were doing small groups, did you have any digital groups happening, or was that kind of before the advent of those?
I mean, in COVID.
Well, yeah.
Yep. In COVID, we did, and it went poorly. So there's that.
Why did it go poorly?
No one wanted to be on. Like, come on. During the pandemic, we were like,
Yeah.
all the churches were like, let's get everybody on Zoom for small groups. And everyone's like, I've been on Zoom for 8 hours today for freaking work.
Yeah.
I don't want to get on at night to go to small group. I'm done looking at the computer screen. So yeah, no, it did not. It did not work. Well, let's just put it that way.
Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, try to stay away from Zoom for a whole lot of reasons. But the tools come last. Honestly, the tools are the easiest thing to get people acquainted with. Most of the people that are joining on a Lux Discord or a Lux small group, they already know how to use Discord. And if they don't, I mean, it's a simple like, hey, here's how to mute. That's it. Do you really have to train anybody any other way other than here's how to join a room?
No, I mean, you gotta, like, people need to know how to use the tools. My honest opinion is, like, if you are the online groups pastor at your church, like, your living nightmare is teaching people how to use the tools. It's like Rhonda wants to join a small group, and her small group's online now.
Yep.
And like Rhonda's like, but I don't know how to get. I got Zoom on my phone, but I don't know how to use it. And you open it, and she just shows you FaceTime.
Yep.
And you're like, literally not even Zoom. My grandkid told me this is how, and I'm like, so like it's just your own personal hell. I lead a digital church, and so one of my general rules is like me nor my staff will teach people how to use tools. If you don't know how to use the tools to get to us, you likely aren't our target. Very likely, actually, are not our target. So I would say it's hard. I would say honestly, like if you're like, wow, we have a bunch of people who are watching our services online, I'm trying to find the right tool. Like, I would just pick one and stick with it. Consistency's king. Like, some people are never going to jump platforms. If you can use Zoom, like, go for it. Alter is just a superior. Honestly, Alter is for church is superior. It's for churched people. Alter is superior to like what we're using on Discord. We're using Discord because Alter is not superior to Discord when it comes to gamers, and we're ministering specifically to gamers. But if I was like, I have a bunch of churched people who just can't physically make it to my building right now, or don't want to come to my building, the Alter will feel the most intuitive because it's built with churches in mind.
Yeah.
So like that's just the way I would gravitate towards. And I think I expressed on there before, we used Alter for a little while. It wasn't the perfect fit for us in this particular season. But if I was an online groups pastor, or if I, trying to do an online campus, like, it's the cheapest building you'll ever buy. So.
Yeah, totally. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode. It was so great to be able to have you, as always. Maybe not as always, because we've only done one episode of this, but you'll be able to find a handy-dandy checklist of everything that we talked about in the links below if you are watching this video on any video streaming platform. And if you're listening in audio version, remember, you can go to the show notes and find all of the links and all of the things that we talked about right in there. Literally a checklist on, okay, number one, all I got to do is train up my small groups on the vision of leadership. And number two, I got to tell them that, that they don't have to be biblical authorities and it's okay to ask questions, and on and on and on. Literally, you can just print it out or pull it up on PDF and just check the box once you get through with that. And we would love to hear how this is all working for you. We would also love to hear anything that you kind of need some help with. We're pulling a lot of this just out of our own experiences through Mark and I, but you are the most valuable resource that any church can have. You as a leader, you as a pastor, you as a mentor, you as even just somebody who's seeking how to better their digital presence. And so we would love to know what's on your mind and the topics that we can help you out with. Shoot them in the comments below, or there is contact information in the show notes to get a hold of us. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.